Hey, what is going on, YouTube? Aaron here. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day wherever you guys are in the world. And guys, a little bit overdue here, but we have the La Aventuria, the French Tier 7 new destroyer here of the alternative line. And that's right. And these ships are pretty fun, but just like the French, they're pretty useless in war. No, I'm just kidding. These ships do have access to the new incendiary torpedoes. They have access to smoke screens as well as decent guns. The reload's a little bit to be desired, but we'll show you guys the full build and specs and all that good stuff at the end of this one here. But we got a nice little replay. And if you guys saw me play this on update week, you saw that these ships were not really the most influential in battle. And I have a few theories for that. Now, Prince Blip has let it be known that the Tier 7 is sort of on the weaker side comparatively to the rest of the line. So I'm excited to try the Tier 8 and then potentially, hopefully, the Legendary Tier in about 3 to 5 business years when Wargaming does drop that. But here we have our friendly New Orleans, unfortunately, taking a few torpedoes. And well, he's really not going to have a great game, but we're going to try and call support to him as well as get out here on the flank, try and get this cap and spot, and of course get a few torpedoes on target. Now, the interesting thing about these torpedoes is they do actually speed up the further they go. So the max, I think, speed that these things get at the max distance, which I believe is 10 kilometers, again, I'm going to review that at the end, is 100 knots with this particular build. So pretty crazy, all things considered. Now, they don't do the most damage, but there is the capacity to set a fire and a flood. So you want to use a combination of things, meaning your smoke screen, getting out on the flanks, and of course, setting a few fires with your guns if you have that opportunity. But these things in a division with a ship that has a high fire chance or, you know, a carrier that can set a flood, the witherer potential is certainly there. Now, Battleship players, fret not. I have yet to see these things truly dominate a game or any of the crazy records appear on the Facebook pages. I'm sure they're out there, and if you guys have, you know, or have seen a 300K game, please let me know because I'd love to give that one a good review. Speaking of reviews, I'm going to try and do a little bit better with getting you guys some Friday features and such. You guys just know that I am very busy, but we finally got this one out to you. Let me know what you guys think of these ships down below. Are you excited to try them? I know they are in early access this update, but they will be fully released here in a week and a half now, I guess, by the time that this video is out. So yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Of course, leave a like, subscribe if you're not already, and all of that YouTuber malarkey here. But anyway, getting into the strategy portion of this game, and this one is kind of a banger. You know, questionable team, but of course, it's Legends. What do you expect? But we have the cap now. We have a few spots, and we're trying to support our team as best we can by getting out on the flank here. I have yet to really get a great game where I sort of get behind the enemy. I had one, but everyone was sort of running away from me. Here, however, is a very good situation for the ship. We have a battleship and a cruiser somewhat within our torpedo range, a destroyer out there. We go ahead and pop our smoke. We're spotted for a brief moment. You don't have the most health, and we do have sims on this build, so a little bit more than the ship comes with. However, you can take a little bit of a beating, but just given the maneuverability and the sort of lacklusterness of the guns as our New Orleans goes down there, you don't want to find yourself out in the open, exposed in a straight-up gunfight too often. But like I said, we did manage to get a good chunk off of that Tashkent 39. He still is burning. And with our influence over here on this cap, we were able to control this flank. Our team also did a decent job over there on the Charlie flank. As you can see, we now control 3 caps. However, you can see the mass of ships right behind Charlie there. So if we are thinking strategy-wise, I want to clean up this flank quickly and then get over there to torpedo them as best I can. Now, I've said this before, but I'll say it again because I often get a few questions about why I torpedo the way I do. And I know it's sort of a running joke amongst my community here, but you don't ever really want to stack torpedoes. And I say this, you know, most players who have an understanding of this game will never sail in a straight line continuously if they know there is a destroyer within torpedo range, or they shouldn't at least. However, that is not what happens most times. So if you do want to stack them against a straight lining battleship, feel free. But the thought process behind that is I will increase my surface area, and especially with torpedoes like this that have the ability to set a flood and a fire, you want to just get one hit at least, as we do there, or two hits rather, that both set a fire. So I think it's funny that torpedoes are setting a fire rather than a flood, and I am not exactly sure why they didn't set a flood. I believe the flooding chance is a little bit lower, but that gentleman is now on a double fire, and because we stacked those torpedoes, we now assured ourselves at least some permanent damage. You know, I do believe he was on damage con, or at least was, because he is still letting that fire, or those double fires, tick. You couple that with being, you know, or having support from a division or teammates who have 3 IQ points to put together, and you get that fire or flood, and then you follow that up with a cruiser or battleship who can then set a permanent fire. And instead of just stacking your torpedoes and getting the cool dev strike, or potentially missing them altogether, you now have a higher rate of return, or return on investment per se. And I know that that's some players or, you know, viewers are going to not understand what I'm talking about there, but for those that do understand the game a little bit more, and or potentially looking to learn, it's, in my opinion, it is better to just increase your surface area of the torpedo spread. Now here, I probably could have put that one a little bit shorter, because my thought process here, and it does turn out to be correct, you saw me drop those short of the cone. Well, why is that? Well, this Veneto coming around the corner has no reason to continue on the path that he did, and he actually stops right there. You can see that he was continuing on straight, but instead he stops, and now those torpedoes, which were once well ahead of him, now have a better angle of attack, and we actually do manage to connect one, which doesn't do that much damage, nor does it set a fire or flood. And again, you can see that he's backing up here, so I'm going to put those slightly behind him. Also, if he turns in, he will be more within that predicted cone. So something to keep in mind when you are torpedoing. And I know that, again, it's just sort of like a running joke here, but you want to try and predict where players will be, not where they are currently with that torpedo cone. That little cone predicts their current path at their current heading, but that is not always where players will continue to go, especially if they know there is a destroyer within torpedo distance, as we just said. Now here he does accelerate, but we popped our smoke and he is shooting at someone else, so he is detected and we are continuing to fire on him with our guns. We do manage to connect a fire there. The reload is pretty decent for these torpedoes. As you can see, the second set, you do have a launcher on each side and a middle launcher there on this boat, so if you can manage to get yourself in somewhat of a close position, you know, where you have some spotting, then yeah, you can start to rack up the damage and be a major thorn in the side of your enemies. The thought process here as well, I was also trying to investigate or find where that Tashkent went. Unfortunately, he did go to the opposite side, and our Bismarck, which did have somewhat of a decent push, you know, is now going to fall to the carrier. However, we do, again, just have a massive advantage. I'm not sure why my team is just donating their ships at this point. I should have probably waited to launch those 2 sets of torpedoes on that Veneto, as I wasn't sure where he was going. But again, logic would dictate that he turns in. There's no other ships on this flank that he has to shoot at, and typically battleship players will just see ship damage and go, ooh, unga bunga, let me just run at this other ship. But these torpedoes here are on a pretty decent path. He's also on damage con, at least for a little bit, because he put out that double fire we set him on. And there goes our Akatsuki, as we give our team the coveted great job for throwing a massive advantage, now letting it down to the 3 remaining ships. Also, like I said, I don't know if I said it in this take, but I have to give some credit to the Turpits. He managed to hold his own out there, you know, getting, I think, a high caliber and a few eliminations in the process. Between me, the carrier, and the Turpits, we were really, truthfully, about the only people to do much in this game. Now here, the carrier actually spotted the Tashkent coming around this corner here, and the Tashkent did have a pretty good detectability. However, we know that he was low because of that permanent fire I set on him a little bit earlier. And if I can manage to eliminate him, then we'll be doing all right. However, if you now look at the mini-map, there are 3 ships over here, one of which was a Bismarck, the other was a Veneto. So I don't want to stupidly push into this because, of course, the Bismarck has a sonar, and unfortunately the Tashkent has at least half of a brain because he does manage to smoke up here, preventing me from getting any further damage on him while simultaneously at least contesting this cap. Now, because there's nothing else spotting us, we can see a few of those ships behind the rocks here. We're going to go ahead and take a few blind fires. However, if you notice, he is now out of the cap, so we did our job in terms of defending, at least for a little bit, but right now I'm trying not to get caught, right? I'm also telling our Graf Zeppelin here to run to the back of the map, as losing him would be a massive detriment to our team, both in terms of points as well as that quick strike capability. Of course, we know carriers have planes which can move a lot faster than ships, so he is able to defend more regions of the map than I obviously relinquished to defending Charlie, or Alpha rather, over on this side of the map. But there is the Tirpitz. He is doing his absolute all over there. He's sort of got left alone against the mass of enemy ships. And now we are trying to defend this Charlie cap. If we can defend this and we can get one more kill, we should be, have just enough points to secure the victory. Now here is a little bit, I say advanced play because I know a lot of my viewers are a little bit newer. The cap was about half, or partly, captured there. The Bismarck was moving in. Our smoke screen was back. We went ahead and shot and then smoked up, so we were visible for briefly, just a few seconds there. We did lose a touch of health, but because we've managed our health, enough, we are able to maintain a good portion of it, which allows us to do what we just did there. And there is a torpedo hit. Again, widening your spread, widening that surface area will be much more of a benefit than stacking those torpedoes. But what we did there, of course, was we baited the Bismarck to shoot. We know that the smoke fire penalty of battleships is significantly greater, obviously, than both cruisers and destroyers. And because he shot, he was detected while we were safe in our smoke screen. However, we did see a few torpedoes, and we know that the Tashkent 39 is lingering there. And here, I'm just trying to be the ultimate teammate. I'm shooting out in the open. I know that my smoke screen is not quite available yet. However, because that Bismarck did take a flood and fire from our torpedoes, he is now on a permanent fire. So we're just going to go ahead and shoot once. The carrier is actually dropping him. But throughout this whole engagement, he was not paying attention to Bravo. And if you guys notice, oh, what happened at Bravo? And this is what I talk about when it is so essential to pay attention to the mini-map. The other destroyer just captured Bravo. That is going to ultimately cost us the game. Now, of course, eliminating this Bismarck here is, something that we should probably think of as I engage this Tashkent 39. But if you notice the position of our Graf Zeppelin, he is within range of that destroyer, probably spotting range of that Yudachi, well within, strikeable distance. So also, we lost that cap, and now the points are not in our favor. In the meantime, though, I did try to shoot at the Tashkent. Given our health, our comparable health pools, I could have easily beaten him in a one-on-one. However, it wasn't a one-on-one. It was a three-on-one, almost a four-on-one at this point. Also, I decided to use widespread to hopefully catch that Tashkent maneuvering, as well as keep them in line or, in somewhat of a zone for that Veneto. So when you double up zones like that, meaning if I throw a widespread there, I have the chance to hit that Tashkent, as well as the chance to hit that Veneto. But here, our Graf Zeppelin, like I said, he did a decent job, all things considered, until he realizes that, that Yudachi is over there, and he's still not sending his planes towards him. I don't know why carrier players do this, and this is why it is so easy to hate on them. Of course, we just don't like carriers. They ruin the rock, paper, scissors aspect of this game. But if he would have just gone after that Yudachi earlier, we potentially still have the B cap. He's potentially still alive, and we have the point lead. Yes, he did help kill the Bismarck, which did give us a point advantage, but losing this, losing the carrier here at the end of the game that's it. We're not going to recover from that. The carriers are worth the most amount of points in the game, and as you can see, we are now down by 4 points. So we did manage to keep the A cap, but if we would have kept the B cap and kept the carrier alive, we would have won this game. So it's all, it's all decisions that you have to think about throughout the game. And here we literally just missed the Yudachi, and I should have thrown those torps behind him even more. I could have, in the moment here and watching this playback back, I could have done so many things differently. However, it shouldn't always rely on one player to make 80% of the plays. So, but that is the game. And again, if I would have stayed on target with the blind fires, or if I would have hit this torpedo or killed that Tashkent or a number of different things, we could have potentially gotten the win. But that is why you play. A decent game there, 2,000 XP on a loss, which would have been 3,000 on a win. And yeah, these ships are fun. They're unique. They're a little bit different, but they're not influential in terms of overall battle impact, in my opinion. But let's quickly review our commander here, a few of the specs and stats, and then we'll give our final thoughts at the end of this video. Mr. Philippe Abaniol, of course, the French main destroyer commander there, or one of the stronger ones in my opinion. Contact is imminent. Look at me now, back in stock. Smoke on the water, and of course, unstoppable, with Bay and Sims as inspirations. This is a little bit of a mixed build here. There's probably a few better builds that I need to explore, and I'm sure there will be Azure Lane giant booby commander to come out that will specifically fit and be tailor-made for these ships. But fully upgraded, here are our modifications: aiming system in a slot 1, propulsion, concealment, and the torpedo reload, legendary torpedo reload mod, rather, in slot 4. Looking at our consumables here, you have access to HE, AP, and there, of course, are the incendiary torpedoes. The ability to set both floods and fires, as well as having a maximum torpedo speed, as you can see there, of 100 knots. So base speed as they leave the tubes, I believe, is 65, and the further they go, the faster they get. Looking at the specs here, survivability is 19,500, and that, of course, is with Sims as an inspiration. Gun range was 11 kilometers there, with a 6.5 reload on those guns. Torpedoes here, 11 kilometer max distance there. I believe that is with one of the inspirations from the commander, and a max torpedo speed of 100 knots with a reload time of 88 seconds. So sort of full torpedo build there. You can get them down pretty well, and that, of course, is what I was trying to focus on, given that the main gimmick of these ships is their torpedoes. Maneuverability is average, and concealment is 5.2 with the different camo concealment module. Look at me now, and the Eric Bay. And here's what I'm talking about in terms of battle impact. I have a little bit higher average damage. It's not the best, which is not really your main goal in a destroyer anyway, but it is about 3 times my ship's HP, which is always something to note. A very good gun accuracy and actually a decent torpedo accuracy, all things considered. But you look at the win rate and the XP, and yeah, of course, it's not going to be higher with a worse win rate, but they're just not high in terms of battle impact, in my opinion. And here's what I mean by that. Now, of course, the split was a very strong destroyer, but you just look at my stats in this thing with 10 games. Less damage, but significantly more XP, significantly better win rate. And here's the Oyster Yachtland with 100 battles. I know someone's going to give me shit about pulling up the split there, but I don't think anyone would argue that the Oyster Yachtland there is super OP, maybe as OP as the Friesland, but they're less damage, arguably, over the long run, and yeah, more games played and a significantly better XP and win rate there. And here is sort of a compare and contrast with the Jaeger, which is a more torpedo-focused boat, and those torpedo-focused boats, they just end up not being as influential because you can't hunt enemy destroyers, and you're really relinquished to just flanking around the enemy, which is why most of us hate the Shima mains in this game. But that being said, it's new, it's different, it's fun, and to break up the same boring monotony that this game can be sometimes, I'm going to give them a try. I'm going to try the Tier 8 when it comes out. And yeah, it's just something different. It's also a new line to grind. And I know some people are like, oh, the grind is insane. Well, guys, welcome to a free-to-play game. But I hope you guys enjoyed that review. Let me know what you guys think. I will see you guys, of course, in the next one here. We're going to be streaming a lot over the break and such. And fun stuff in store. Tell someone you love them. If you're caught up in the materialism of these holidays, go out and give back to your community. Last year, I delivered meals to the homeless on Thanksgiving, and it kind of changed my perspective. So I think I'm going to do that again this year. But yeah, I love you guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out.
Peace.